Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in the world. We welcome you to today's global webinar for the WHO-UNICEF GLAAS 2025 report. GLAAS, as many of you know, stands for the UN Water Global Analysis and Assessment of Sanitation and Drinking Water. The three organizers of today's session include UN Water, of course, as well as UNICEF and WHO. We have a very exciting program for you today, so let's commence. So these are the objectives for today's session. The first is to share key findings from the GLAAS 2025 report. The second is to understand how GLAAS fits into larger political landscapes. The third is to demonstrate how to use the GLAAS data portal. And the fourth is to reflect on how countries and partners are putting GLAAS findings into action. As I mentioned earlier, we have a very exciting program for you today. Following these introductions, our first speaker will be Aidan Cronin, who will offer some high-level reflections. Aidan is the Senior Advisor for WASH at the UNICEF Global WASH Practice and UNICEF Center of Excellence in Nairobi. Following Aidan, we will have a presentation of GLAAS by Ms. Betsy Engebretson, who is a Technical Officer with the GLAAS as part of WHO. Following Betsy, we'll look at some of the key findings from this report, and these will be delved into by Ms. Janet Atim, who is the GLAAS co-lead at our partner UNICEF. After that, we'll have a very interesting and exciting interactive presentation of the GLAAS data portal, and this will be led by Ms. Marina Takane, who is also a technical officer with the GLAAS team at WHO. After these opening components, we'll look for some global reflections, examples, and practical applications during a session featuring three partners. The first is Juste Nansi, Director of the Africa Hub at IRC. The second is Ms. Mwenya Mulindwa with the government of Zambia. She is a monitoring and evaluation expert. And thirdly, we'll have Khairul Islam, who is the Regional Director, South Asia for WaterAid. That session will be moderated by Dr. Fiona Gore, the GLAAS co-lead at the WHO. And finally, we'll have closing reflections and next steps from the head of the WASH unit at WHO, Mr. Bruce Gordon. So without further ado, I invite Aidan Cronin to welcome us with high-level reflections. Aidan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dave, and welcome everyone again to the webinar today. We're delighted to see so many people coming in to learn about the importance of the GLAAS report. I will start at quite a high level before we jump into the details of the report and some of the key findings that came out of the GLAAS report. What I just wanted to share is how the report is being actively used and the value that it's bringing to the water and sanitation sector, especially at this critical time where we've a very different global landscape, but also as we move into the months ahead, we will be all very much involved in the UN 2026 Water Conference, and that needs to be, of course, an evidence-based discussion. And for that, we need critical guidance and the latest, state of the sector, state of systems, capacity, financing, climate policies, etc., in the sector. And that's what the GLAAS report provides us, which we'll delve into now. Of course, we're a critical juncture also in that there's it's the home run stretch to 2030 and the end of the SDGs. What will happen then? How will the world prepare itself for what comes next? This is where we will see the type of findings that will be presented today, shaping that dialogue moving forward. It also is important for development partners, IFIs, private sector looking to invest for maximum input in the sector, that we have the latest per country and per region on how the sector is faring, what are those critical bottlenecks and challenges that we're seeing. And if we're formulating solutions to those challenges, that we can take those learnings across contexts, across countries, and address those in a systematic way. I mentioned already the process for the UN 2026 Water Conference that will be in UAE at the end of this year. We've already been using GLAAS, particularly for two of the interactive dialogue themes, which are water for people and investment in water. So, GLAAS report is shaping up some of the key messages that we see coming out from the initial discussions and preparatory groups, you know, to bring into the high level discussions that will happen in the UAE. But also what we're excited to see the GLAAS report show is how specific countries and development partners have found innovative solutions to tackle persistent challenges such as strengthening and monitoring of WASH systems, integrating climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience into WASH services. It's quite, the GLAAS report's quite complementary to the JMP report, which WHO and UNICEF also work together on, in that, you know, it's the story behind the numbers of the JMP, and it also benefits, of course, other initiatives of the UN, the SWA partnership, the UNFCCC work, the work going on defining climate resilient indicators for the WASH sector. So really, it's a critical report to contribute evidence to the technical case for water and sanitation in the water conference this year, in the lead up to the end of the SDG era and beyond the post 2030 sustainable development framework. So having set that scene as to the importance of the report, maybe I'll hand over here, Betsy, to you to take us forward into the next agenda item. Thank you.
Thanks, Aidan. Thanks, Dave. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. It's great to see so many people from around the world. And I think, Marina, are you going to be sharing your screen? Perfect. And next slide, please. And so now Aidan gave us some global context about how GLAAS fits in with everything, and I'm going to go into more detail about what GLAAS is, so we're all on the same page before we get into some of the results and then the demo of the data portal. So first of all, what does GLAAS stand for? GLAAS stands for the UN Water Global Analysis and Assessment of Sanitation and Drinking Water. That's quite a mouthful, so from now on, we'll just be calling it GLAAS. And what does GLAAS do? It monitors elements of WASH systems in the enabling environment. Its main areas of focus are governance, which includes policies, plans, national targets, monitoring, which includes different indicators countries are using, WASH management information systems, etc. Human resources, including what sort of capacity do countries have, what sort of training programs are in place, and finance, looking at sufficiency, budgets, trends, among other topics. And then we also include topics such as climate, gender, and leaving no one behind. And GLAAS was first piloted in 2008, and since then we've had a total of 8 GLAAS cycles and reports. Another important aspect of GLAAS is that we are WHO is co-custodian for monitoring SDG targets 6A and 6B on the means of implementation. 6A is on international cooperation and 6B is on local participation. And by participating in the GLAAS survey, countries are able to report on both 6A and 6B. And then GLAAS is also more than just data at the global level. The GLAAS process in countries is a very important aspect of GLAAS. Through the country survey, partners in countries work with the government, and they all join together to fill out the GLAAS survey. So it is really a learning opportunity and a coordination opportunity for countries and partners in countries. And then all GLAAS data are national data reported and validated by governments. So this is information coming directly from the government. Next slide, please, Marina. And so putting in the context of how GLAAS fits within SDG 6 global monitoring. So all of this is under the UN Water family with the different SDG 6 targets. And then you can see in the middle 6A and 6B, and the means of implementation are where GLAAS fits in. And those targets cover all of SDG 6, and they complement the monitoring of the other indicators. Next slide, please, Marina. And that's how UN Water fits with all of that. And then GLAAS is also more than just the GLAAS data collection, reports, and data portal, which is the focus of today. But as I mentioned previously, we also are monitoring SDG 6A and 6B. We've developed WASH accounts, and that's using the TrackFin methodology, which allows countries to track WASH spending and expenditures in countries. And we are happy to answer any questions about that. We have a number of countries around the world developing WASH accounts, and we have a lot of great financial data from that. And then also collaboration and partnerships. We couldn't do what we do alone. We rely on our partners, and we love working with our partners. And there are just a handful of partners listed there. But we really appreciate the work with our partners. And with that, I'm going to pass it over. Oh, one more slide. Sorry, Marina. And now just a little bit about the GLAAS 2025 report before I pass it over to Janet, who will go into the details. So for the report this year, the main report is in English, but then we developed a key findings document that is available in English and French, and it is a summary of the GLAAS report. And then you can see to the side, there are the 10 sections of the GLAAS report, and it aligns with what I'd mentioned that GLAAS focuses on earlier. So we have policies, plans, we have monitoring and review, regulation, surveillance, human resources, finance, development partner support, a section on SDG 6A and 6B, leaving no one behind, and climate and WASH. And with that, I will now turn it over to Janet to go into some of the details of the report. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Betsy. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on your time zone. Moving on to the key findings of the GLAAS report. This presentation will provide an overview of the key findings from the GLAAS 2025 report. The presentation will cover select sections of the results from the report. A lot more information is available in the key findings document, as well as in the GLAAS report that has been published, as well as through the data portal that will be shared later on during the presentation. So please do refer to these resources. So starting by providing an overview of the data that informed the development of the GLAAS 2025 report. Betsy had spoken a little bit on this, but from the map, we can see that the information came in from different countries, territories, regions, development partners that all participated during the GLAAS 2024-2025 survey cycle. We can see from the map that other than country submissions, responses were received from multilateral development banks, bilateral donors, UN agencies, international NGOs, and philanthropic organizations. Overall, responses were received from 105 countries and 21 development partners, with participation from thousands of individuals and hundreds of institutions. Next slide, please. Let's dive into some of the GLAAS 2025 results, starting with policies, plans, and institutional arrangements and national targets. The results in this area showed that most countries have made important progress in establishing policies and institutional arrangements and in setting national targets. Nearly 90% of the countries have adopted policies for at least one WASH subsector, while about 70% of the countries reported having formally approved a policy and plan. Furthermore, most countries have incorporated safely managed service levels for drinking water and sanitation into WASH policies and plans and national targets. In terms of the national targets, we can see from the graph that has been displayed that while most countries have set national targets for drinking water and sanitation, we can see 85% and 87% respectively. Fewer than half have done the same for hand hygiene. This signals a need for greater institutional focus and dedicated efforts to prioritize hand hygiene. Next slide, please. So when we consider the resources to implement policies and plans that have been developed, the results show that whereas most countries have policies and plans for drinking water and sanitation, lack of sufficient financial and human resources to fully implement these policies and plans remains a persistent challenge. The graph shows that the number of countries reporting formally approved policies supported by resource plans for urban water and urban and rural sanitation and drinking water. So when we move from the bottom to the top of the pyramid, we can see that on average, 90 countries have already approved policies for urban or rural sanitation and drinking water, or are in the process of developing them. This reduces to an average of about 83 countries having policies that are formally approved. And when we move further on, this reduces further to an average of about 55 countries with formally approved policies as well as costed plans. Then at the top of the pyramid, we see that we only have 8 countries that have formally approved policies, costed plans, and sufficient human and financial resources to support the implementation. This signals a critical gap between the strategic planning and practical rollout and translation of aspiration in the policies and plans into realities. Next slide, please. Now considering monitoring, review, and use of data for decision making. The assessment revealed that there are strong positive trends in the use of data for decision making. Most countries have defined national monitoring indicators for WASH policies and plans. However, the indicators that are agreed and tracked are more common for service coverage, quality and infrastructure than for governance, finance, and human resources. Less than 1/3 of countries have national monitoring indicators for affordability and equity. Considering the results from the graph that has been displayed, the assessment shows that a majority of countries undertake joint sector reviews with development partners, but the regularity varies. When we move from the bottom of the graph, 73 of 100 countries reported conducting joint sector reviews, of which 68 used the review process to set priority actions. 58 of these countries review priority actions from previous joint sector reviews and review progress towards national targets during their joint sector reviews. However, out of the 73 countries that responded and reported conducting joint sector reviews, 23 reported that they are conducted on an ad hoc basis. This calls for deliberate efforts in regularizing the review in order to effectively track progress and align data with national priorities. Next slide, please. So considering the results related to financing, we'll start by considering the annual estimated costs to implement WASH plans and strategies. To give some background, the assessment on finance covered development and implementation of WASH financing plans and strategies, cost estimates for plans and strategies, adequacy of financial resources for WASH, and WASH expenditure and its sources. Several of the countries indicated availability of finance strategies and plans. We had responses from 70 countries. These 70 responding countries provided plan and strategy cost estimates for one or more of the WASH areas or for all of the WASH areas. When annualized in US dollars, it was estimated that over 69 billion US dollars in annual cost is estimated as a requirement to implement WASH plans and strategies, as has been shown in the first bar in the graph. The total annual WASH cost that was estimated includes the estimated cost of sanitation and drinking water plans, the subsequent two bars in the graph, as well as plans that could not be disaggregated by sector. However, sufficient funding remains a main obstacle to achieving WASH targets, as we shall see in the subsequent slides. Next slide, please. Considering the funding sufficiency to meet national targets, based on data provided by 20 countries on quantitative gaps by subsectors, it was estimated that only 53% of the funding needed per year to reach the national WASH targets is available. This represents a deficit of 46% in funding. When split by subsector, as shown in the graph, we see that the funding gap for urban sanitation is the largest of the four WASH subsectors at 57%, followed by rural sanitation and the least being in rural drinking water. Overall, the resulting funding gap of 46% in these countries reinforces the need for greater investments to achieve WASH targets. Next slide, please. So considering the total WASH expenditure. In this graph, 58 of 105 countries reported an estimated annual WASH expenditure of 70 billion US dollars, including public expenditure and expenditure by users. The expenditure includes that required to cover capital and operations and maintenance expenses. These 58 countries represent a population of over 2 billion, as you can see from the graph, and an average annual per capita WASH expenditure of 34 US dollars. In terms of the average annual WASH expenditure as a percentage of the GDP, this is approximately computed as 0.83%. Next slide, please. Thank you. So considering expenditure by sources of funding, This analysis was based on data provided by 40 countries on their overall WASH expenditure, including the capital and operations and maintenance expenditure and debt financing by all sources of funding, that is by tariffs and out-of-pocket expenses, resources from government, grants, and repayable financing. As shown in the graph, the total annual WASH expenditure in these countries was approximated at 60 billion, of which users pay 50% through tariffs and out-of-pocket expenses, followed by government contributing 33% and then repayable finance at 14% and then grants at 3%. This shows the significant and critical contribution made by users to the sector financing, standing at 50% of the overall WASH expenditure. Next slide, please. So considering ODA for water and sanitation, based on the latest data from the OECD, as reported by bilateral and multilateral donors on the development aid activities, total ODA commitments decreased by 1.1%, moving from 2022 to 2023, where the latest data has been presented. In comparison, the ODA for water and sanitation decreased much more significantly by 9%, signaling the need to look into innovative approaches to finance the sector. When we consider how ODA was allocated by region, the figure shows the percentage of global water and sanitation ODA commitments directed to each SDG sub-region. We note from the map that Sub-Saharan Africa received the highest percentage of ODA, which stood at 40% for water supply and sanitation in 2023, and this was followed by 23% to Northern Africa and Western Asia. The assessment under this section also considered subsector disaggregation, and in which trend data indicated that the percentage of ODA to sanitation fluctuates between 31 and 40% of allocated ODA, and also that it declined from 40 to 34% moving from 2021 to 2023, which again points back to the need to look at innovative financing mechanisms to close this gap. Next slide, please. Thank you. And finally, we'll look at the results in climate and WASH. To give some background, the assessment in this area broadly covered the definition of climate resilient WASH, how climate is included in WASH policies and plans, including reaching populations disproportionately affected by climate change, climate risk assessments, monitoring climate resilient WASH, climate finance and development partner support to WASH and climate. The table shows data on the scope of measures being undertaken to improve and extend services to populations disproportionately affected by climate change by SDG region. It can be seen that the majority of countries have policies and plans to reach populations that have been disproportionately affected. However, far fewer countries have measures to monitor the progress of these interventions or to finance these interventions. That's all. Thank you. And over to you, Marina.
Thanks so much, Janet. So I'll be giving a quick overview and tour of the GLAAS data portal. So you can see the address of the site is glaas.who.int, so glaas.who.int. And we do have some features that I'm really excited to show you. So one is the online interactive key findings from the report. This is new. This is the first time we've done this. So I hope you'll find this interesting and useful. And I'm also going to show you the country highlights, which show an overview of the data by country. So I'm going to show these features live on the data portal itself. If you'll just give me a moment to share my other window. So here is the landing page of the GLAAS data portal. You can see as of a few months ago, we are now a co-branded WHO and UNICEF site. The GLAAS data portal is available in English, French, and in Spanish. There's the language selector up here, so you can select the language. So on the landing page, you can see the links to the GLAAS report, to the key findings document here, as well as here. So these are the links to the PDF documents. And so for the first time, we have this online interactive GLAAS key findings. So there's the link here at the at the top of the landing page, or you can also access it through the key findings menu. There is an item called GLAAS 2025 report key findings. So if you open that up, you'll see that there's an overview introduction page, and then the results are shown sort of by thematic area. It's the similar structure to the chapters in the GLAAS report. So you can select the thematic area to look at the results for that area in more detail. So for example, here we have the policies, plans, institutional arrangements, and national targets. We have here, the chart that Janet showed us on the policies and plans. But the difference here is that you can filter by, for whatever region that you're interested in. So for example, if you want to see the results for the WHO African region, you can filter and it will show you the results. And you'll note as well that in addition to the WHO regions, we have here the UNICEF program regions, the UNICEF reporting regions, as well as SDG regions and the World Bank income groups. So there's really, quite a lot that you can do in terms of different groupings of countries and to be able to explore the results. And so for each thematic area, we have a handful, maybe 4 or 5 key findings per thematic area. We've made as many charts and tables as possible interactive, but you will note that some of the charts are static. We've done our best. I think something like 80% of the charts and tables are interactive. So, really encouraging you to dig into the data and to explore. I'll maybe just show one more example on the climate and WASH page. So this is looking at the percentage of countries addressing climate in their WASH policies and plans. So the first row looking at whether climate risks are included, second row whether climate resilience is addressed, and third row whether climate mitigation is addressed. So these are the global results, and again, and maybe this time I'll go for a UNICEF region, but you can select for, a specific region of interest, and you'll see that it will update the results. And you can see again that, there's quite a bit of variation from region to region, so, it can be quite interesting to explore the results in this way. So hopefully this will be useful to you as you're looking at the results to be able to look at results of interest in more detail. I also wanted to show you the GLAAS country highlights, which you can access through this country highlights menu item, and there's an element called GLAAS highlights. If you click on that, this will bring up the list of countries. You can, of course, go back to results from previous cycles, but we do now have the data from the most recent cycle up. And so you have the list of countries. You can just select the country that interests you, and this will bring up the GLAAS country highlights below. So overall, it's structured in a very similar way to the online interactive key findings. There's an overview page and then results by thematic area. So you can, select a thematic area to look at those results in more detail. So under policies and plans, we do have much more detailed information on policies and plans for you to look at. One other useful feature is that you can export each page into a PDF file. So if you just click on the PDF button, this will export the file into a PDF, and then you can see the results in a PDF document. So if you prefer to share the results using PDF, you can do that as well. So there you see the export of the page in PDF. I also wanted to show you very quickly the data and the visualizations pages of the GLAAS data portal. So these have existed previously, but of course now we have the most recent results up. So the data page is to look at and to be able to download data for specific indicators. You'll see on the left there's a number of filters to allow you to select exactly the data that interests you. You'll see here there's a full list of all of the indicators that GLAAS covers. There's a lot. We have, I think, around 300 indicators. You can search by typing in this box. So for instance, if you're interested in climate related indicators, if you just start typing climate, it will filter for all of the indicators that have that text in the indicator name. So this brings up all of the climate related indicators. Another way of filtering is by topic area. So if you're interested, for example, in looking at indicators related to participation, if you filter by topic, it will filter the list of indicators to only the indicators related to participation. So you can select the indicators here. You can select the years of interest here, and then the countries of interest. And if you click on search, this will bring up a data table based on the parameters that you've selected. So the countries, the years, and then the indicators that you've selected, and then the data for all of the dimensions for each of the indicators that's available in the data set. You can also show an unpivoted view of the data sometimes when you want to do a more detailed, in-depth analysis of the data. It's easier for the data to be formatted in this way. You can export the data to Excel. If you want to explore a little bit, you can also use the filters here, etc. Very quickly, the visualizations page as well. You'll see that the interface is very similar to select an indicator. The only difference being here that you would only select one indicator. So I will just go and select one of the participation indicators that we were looking at previously. Once you select the indicator, it will bring up the other parameters. So you can select the year, you can select the service and the setting. Here we're looking at urban sanitation, and then the countries that you're interested in looking at. So if you click on search, again, this will show a chart and a data table on the right. And then you can go back and refine, say, if you only want to look at countries in the Americas, you can click on search again to update the results, and this will update the chart and the data table. You can change the chart type slightly if in case you prefer bar charts or donut charts. You can export the charts to different file types. And this is an interesting feature that will generate a link and copy the link to a clipboard. And this way you can share this particular result with your friends or your colleagues. You can also share on social media, or you can share it with yourself. Maybe you want to come back to see this result later. So this provides a way of sharing a specific result from the GLAAS data portal. So I think that was my very quick tour of the data portal, and so really encouraging you again to explore the results and to make use of the results in the various national processes, as well as regional and global processes that are ongoing this year. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Fiona for the country and partner reflection session.
Thank you very much, Marina, and thank you, Betsy and Janet. We're ahead of time. I mean, that never happens. So I'm really pleased that we're going to have ample time to hear from our panelists in this session. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. and so many of you. It's really exciting. My name is Fiona Gore from WHO. I coordinate the GLAAS program on the WHO side. And it's my pleasure to moderate this discussion on how we can put GLAAS findings into action, and that at all levels. I mean, across countries, regions, and globally. So we've just heard more about the latest GLAAS results that were launched end of January in Dakar. Which really highlight both how progressed and persistent gaps in governance, financing, monitoring, and the enabling environment for WASH are. But we also just had a really interesting, and thank you, Marina, for that live demonstration of the data portal and how the data can be accessed, how to access the country highlights, and how to download the data. And I really am excited about some of those new features, and I know Marina's also really excited about them, and across the team we all are. So I hope you are all really excited, and you're all now in the data portal. But you know, bear your enthusiasm, stay with us before you go and explore the data portal even further, because in this session we'd like to move from data to action. So what does this mean for the sector actors and stakeholders? How are governments and partners using GLAAS in policy dialogues, planning, decision-making, and resource allocation? And what needs to change? What needs to be done better to accelerate progress? And so to explore these questions, we're joined today by 3 distinguished panelists who bring government, practitioner, and partner perspectives, and long-standing critical partners to WHO and UNICEF. So it's my great pleasure to introduce you to first Mrs. Mwenya Mulindwa, Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist at the Ministry of Water Development and Sanitation from the government of Zambia, who has led country processes that directly integrate GLAAS evidence into national planning. And also, I'm pleased to let you know that Zambia has also recently joined the 40+ countries that are developing or have developed WASH accounts to track and analyze financial flows in the water, sanitation, and hygiene sector. So that's really exciting. Next, we will have and hear from Khairul Islam, Regional Director for South Asia region from WaterAid, a long-standing partner of WHO and, of course, all of us in the sector, of using GLAAS data to inform advocacy, accountability, and system-level programming. And finally, we have Dr. Juste Nansi, Director of the Africa Hub at IRC, bringing deep experience in system strengthening, supporting governments to improve service delivery, and fostering learning communities to create sustainable long-term WASH services. And after that, we will then open up the floor, but I'll also have the pleasure to welcome one of my colleagues from the WHO country office in Madagascar to maybe say a few words from a country office point of view after our panelists, and then we'll be opening up for questions. But do keep your questions coming in the chat. I see we have a large number of participants today in today's webinar, which is really exciting. And I've seen some participants who I know will have many questions. So just keep them flowing in the chat. We have a team here of people who'll be trying to answer them, and we'll try and get to as many questions as we can. But first of all, I'm going to turn to Mrs. Mwenya Mulindwa to maybe tell us a little bit more how Zambia has used GLAAS findings in sector reviews, policy dialogues, or national planning processes. And could you share some examples where GLAAS evidence has helped shift priorities, shape decisions, or resource allocation? And just thinking ahead, what support improvements would help governments use GLAAS more effectively? So Mwenya, over to you to share a few reflections. Thank you.
Hi, Fiona. Hi, everyone. And we started, I think, way back reporting on the GLAAS reports. And at this particular time, we are looking at the 2024-2025 GLAAS report. So with regards to the current GLAAS reports, we have so much as a country. What stood out for us are issues to do with significant financing gaps, also fragmented institutional coordination across the sector, and as well as I think this one was the newly introduced, the climate resilience issues, climate that was that has not been integrated into the WASH systems in Zambia. So with regard to financing gaps and sustainable financing, GLAAS has, just like any other country, has highlighted persistent financing gaps, of which Zambia is not an exception. So we are prioritizing advocacy for increased sector budget allocation and also explore other mechanisms for sustainable financing in the WASH sector. Also, it has led to initiatives such as the development of private sector investment strategies. GLAAS information or GLAAS data is informing our private sector investment strategies that is being developed. We are also using the WASH. We are in the process, of developing the WASH accounts that will provide a transparent, consolidated view of all sector funding, which will enable evidence-based planning. And the process of also developing the WASH accounts, information will come, or data will be used from the GLAAS reports. Also, in terms of fragmented institutional coordination, according to the findings, there is a fragmented coordination, and with Zambia, I would say we have overlapping roles and responsibilities. So in terms of Zambia, it has been prompted to review our sector coordination framework. We are the GLAAS data is also being used to inform the review of our sector coordination framework, and also strengthening technical working groups, as well as the development of integrated management information system to enable evidence decision making, also to harmonize sector planning. I think the other thing that stood out for Zambia was issues to do with, like I earlier mentioned, was climate resilience integration. GLAAS revealed that climate risks were sufficiently integrated into our WASH planning, highlighting vulnerability to droughts, floods, and extreme weather conditions. So this information is being used in Zambia as for climate considerations are now increasingly being incorporated into WASH projects. And Zambia has also, I'll say, I think late last year, we also started developing the climate strategy, the climate rationale strategy. And we are using data from the GLAAS to inform the development of the climate rationale strategy. I think those are the three that stood out for us, but I'll also go further to talk about the challenges that we had encountered as a country in the process of reporting on the 2024-2025 GLAAS. So we had issues to do with data gaps and inconsistencies, developing a national integrated management system to harmonize data across institutions. So this is what we are doing to overcome the data gaps and inconsistencies. We are in the process of developing an integrated information system as a country, and we are still using the data from the GLAAS. And the other thing that we we encountered during the GLAAS reporting is delays in reporting. You find that you need data that is not readily available. So we are establishing standardized reporting timelines and procedures using the same data. And like Aidan mentioned, issues to do with a limited climate data integration, incorporating climate and resilience into our indicators. I think this is all for Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mwenya. I think that was really, I mean, some of the examples you've just provided, I think are absolutely excellent and really concrete and precise. And it's really absolutely fantastic to hear firsthand from a country representative of, you know, how useful actually collecting that information for the survey and some of the challenges that you had in collecting the data. So I'm actually really excited, and I know many of us are going to be really excited about the fact that you're developing an integrated information system and trying to harmonize the data collection and the sort of standardize also the data collection reporting and the timelines. And that's really exciting. I'm really also glad that you've mentioned the climate resilient WASH section that we included in the latest survey, and that's actually being useful for you to try and incorporate these into your WASH planning as well. So I think that's a really very positive point. So with that, I'm going to turn to my dear colleague Khairul Islam from WaterAid. And Khairul, how does WaterAid use GLAAS to inform advocacy and engagement with governments? And what insights from the latest cycle, you know, stand out to you as the most urgent? How can we really turn these data into action? And what do you see as the practical barriers for partners when translating GLAAS finding into action? Because I know this, you know, data use is one of the most difficult aspects. So we're really excited to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that probably in South Asia, I mean, particularly in Bangladesh, we are the very first country that from round one, we have been collaborating with WHO for GLAAS report, and gradually Nepal, and in the last round, Pakistan joined. The reason actually we opted for it and collaborate is one very simple reason. The JMP tells us what has been the progress, but it is the GLAAS report which tells us why the progress or why not the progress is not happening. So this why question is really important, which really gives us the weapon for advocacy. Now, I will not go into the details of, you know, the country-specific data or anything, but what I can tell you is that these particular aspects are actually, I mean, the why is addressing the systemic issues. It's not, you know, I mean, going in many directions. It's focusing on the governance, on the investment, on the human resources. That is the elements of all the systems part of WASH services. And when we look into that, then we understand that where we need to emphasize. Now, the question is, do we really emphasize on every component as part of the advocacy? And before I got into that point or elaborate that point, I would like to say the countries which have done national WASH accounts, that really becomes a fantastic winning combination, because much more insight, especially in light of equity, can really be manifested through those combination of those two. So usually what we see that policies are getting gradually, you know, minimized, but the weak institution, human resource, and under investment are becoming much more prominent, which also came up in the last round of GLAAS review. Now, the question is why we should, I mean, as an organization, why we collaborate and how we use this data. I would argue that GLAAS is not only the diagnostics tool, it is also pointing towards solution. And that's the reason, actually, from the civil society aspect, we should support activities and use GLAAS findings for our advocacy. Why? Because it amplifies equity and it amplifies that no one is left behind. It explicitly tracks whether systems are reaching most vulnerable population or not. So there are many elements, I mean, in the systems strengthening part. But in South Asia, the one we pick up is the equity aspect. And supplemented by national wash accounts, we try to promote for, enhancing equity. So for the advocacy reason, we don't say that we need more investment. Now we say we need better targeted investment, stronger regulation, sustainable tariff. That is, we are shifting. I mean, again, I'm saying that this is more an organizational policy that we pick up one particular thing in South, where all the countries are getting specialized by using us as well as by using national wash accounts. And by doing so, our advocacy agenda is becoming focused towards no one is left behind and enhancing equity in the sector. And it connects the national realities into global influence. How? By engaging GLAAS, civil society ensures that local realities shape global agendas. And this is how actually upcoming UN conference will feed in number of things that would really, we can really contribute. So do we take all GLAAS report, without any criticism? No. We engage in data validation. We try to promote that community voices in national reporting are really taken care of. And we push for transparency that the government, the way they supply data, those are really the genuine data. So let me conclude by saying that SDG 6 is a systemic challenge. And then GLAAS is the one of the few tools helping us to understand those systems at a scale. And for civil society, supporting GLAAS is not optional. It is strategic. And I would like to conclude a deliberation with one sentence that GLAAS turns data into accountability, and accountability leads to progress. And civil society must be part of that chain. With those, I hand it over back to Fiona.
Thank you very much, Khairul. If you allow me, I'm probably in the future going to be quoting you on several aspects of what you've just said, because I think one of the things that you said, I think is really fantastic to hear, is about the fact that GLAAS with wash account is a winning combination. And I think we feel the same. I mean, GLAAS will provide a snapshot of the financial situation in a country, but wash accounts really allows a country to dive deeper into what the gaps are and how much and where, and answer all these critical questions, and really dive down into the details of financial flows. So I think that is absolutely fantastic. And the other thing you've just said, which I think really resonates, and this makes me really excited to hear this, is that, coming from you as WaterAid, is that, the data connects to, and the GLAAS process connects to national realities, and that really helps shape global agendas. And I think that point is absolutely fantastic and is a great segue for me to turn to our colleague Juste Nansi from IRC, because I think there's Juste, as we all know, and Khairul's just sort of mentioned that we have many activities happening. There's a lot going on this year, particularly towards the end of the SDG agenda and 2030 framework. There's a lot going on this year with the UN Water Conference. We were recently together at the Senegal preparatory meeting for the water conference happening later this year. There's also the sanitation, the Africa Water and Sanitation Systems Leadership Symposium in August. And I won't list all that is happening over the next 8 months, but from a system strengthening perspective, I mean, where do you see GLAAS having the most impact in driving acceleration towards progress at not only the national level, as Khairul was explaining, but also at the regional and the global level? And how are partners using GLAAS for alignment, coordination, or technical support? And how can we really make an impact? So if you could reflect on the opportunities you see for GLAAS to become more actionable in these processes. Why is it important at a regional and global level as well as at the national level? So over to you, Juste. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you for, it's really a privilege for me to reflect on what the GLAAS 2025 finding means, and not just as data points, but much more as a call to action, as you rightly said, and what is arguably the most consequential year for the global water and sanitation in the last 10 years, I think. The headline message from GLAAS is both sobering and clarifying at the same time. We now have evidence from 105 countries that the barriers to universal wash are not a mystery. There are system failures in financing, in regulation, in workforce capacity, and in institutional coordination. Fewer than 20% of countries have sufficient funding to meet their national targets. Government wash budgets are stagnant in real terms. 60% of countries cannot spend even the capital budgets they already have. These are governance challenges, and that clarification matters enormously for what we do next. If I bring this down to the geography where I work most, the sub-Saharan Africa, the findings carry particular weight. Many countries are spending less than $5 per person per year on wash from all sources combined, and several are below $3. With ODA projected to decline significantly in the coming years, the question is not whether Africa can continue to depend on external financing, but it's actually clearly because they cannot. But the question is whether national systems are strong enough and credible enough to mobilize domestic resources and attract investment at scale. So crucially, the GLAAS data do not simply describe these challenges. They point clearly to the solution, as Khairul from WaterAid just said. What is needed, from my view, is a transformation of systems and institutions built around 4 interconnected pillars: leadership, regulation and accountability, professionalization, and strategic public finance. GLAAS tells us that globally, only 24% of countries have sufficient human resources for drinking water regulation, and only 90% for sanitation regulation. These global averages are likely worse in low-income countries. And policies exist, but resources to implement them do not. So closing that gap between commitments and delivery is, from my view, the defining challenge for us as a sector. So, and this is precisely what IRC is working to address. And the Africa Water and Sanitation Systems Leadership Symposium in Kigali in August is one of our flagship contribution or initiative to do exactly that. It's organized by IRC under the mandate of AMCAO and the Rwandan government. And this symposium is structured around those same 4 transformation pillars. It will bring together African ministers, regulators, utility leaders, and financiers to move from diagnosis to action, exactly as you stated, Fiona. turning the evidence that GLAAS provides into concrete reform commitments. So Kigali is then a crucial and integral step on our collective road from Dakar to Abu Dhabi. At the Dakar preparatory meeting in January, the message was unambiguous. 2026 is an action year, not another advocacy cycle. The credibility of the global water agenda will be judged by delivery. So the Kigali Symposium is designed as Africa's pivotal contribution to that process at a moment it will be a moment actually to consolidate not only a renewed continental vision, but a concrete framework for transformation of the water and sanitation systems and institutions anchored in the newly approved Africa Water Vision 2063. So Africa will then travel to the UN Water Conference in Abu Dhabi in December, carrying that framework, a genuine demonstration of regional leadership and readiness for structural reform. And the evidence is on the table, provided by GLAAS. The path is clear, and Kigali in August is where I believe, Africa takes a defining step along that path. So I would like to close with an invitation to all of us in this webinar to join us, to join the conversation in Kigali. This is an historic process, and your voice, your expertise, your commitment will help shape what Africa brings to Abu Dhabi and to the world. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Fiona. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Juste, for those really sort of clear points and really sort of elevating all this to the global processes as well, because I think regional and global processes, and as you said, from Dakar to Abu Dhabi, I think one thing that you said, I think really resonates with us and is it's really about, you know, GLAAS being able to pinpoint the system failures in sort of the inputs and the processes, which, as Khairul was saying and others have been saying, which point why outcomes are not progressing. Now's the time. This is the year. As you said, the path is clear. We now need to act. And to act, we need you. We need you all of you on this webinar. We need you to speak out. We need you to be advocates and to use this data to actually make sure that water, sanitation and hygiene stay high on the agenda and is visible. And I think that the GLAAS 25 report actually, and the data portal has even more data that can be used and really elevated to the highest level. But we really need to all hold hands and be together on this path from Dakar to Abu Dhabi, through Kigali, of course, and other places along the way. Fantastic. So thanks very much to our distinguished panelists. I think we've had some really nice concrete examples, you know, and we've also heard about some of the bottlenecks in using GLAAS and for decision making. I think we can all sort of, and we've had some really good examples of how it's being used to actually shape policy dialogues and sector reforms, but we really need to act upon these data. I think one sort of other reflections that we really, and I'm saying these questions for also you to reflect as panelists in the chat, of how GLAAS can better be linked with national systems such as and processes such as joint sector reviews, some of the SDG reporting, or the financing dialogues. And also another question I'm going to share and ask everyone is, what innovations or partnerships could amplify the impact of future GLAAS cycles? So I think what I'd like to do now is maybe I've been shared by my team with a couple of questions that have come up in the chat, and I'm afraid I haven't myself been able to monitor. But Mwenya, there's been a question from a participant, Michelle, Treza Waga, who's asking, what does standardized reporting procedures that you were mentioning during your reflections based on WASH data means? So concretely, can you give us an example of what's being put in place in Zambia to standardize reporting? Mwenya, over to you.
Okay, what I referred to standardized reporting procedures in Zambia WASH sector is to ensure that all institutions that are collecting WASH data have the same templates. I'll say, for instance, certain partners might they use a different templates, maybe slightly similar to what the national government has. So this creates certain disparities. I'll give an example, for instance, in water point functionality or sanitation coverage. Schools and communities need to report on latrine availability consistently across, for instance, provinces or districts where they're reporting from, rather than having a different reporting tools by other partners. So we are in the process of standardizing the reporting tools so that we are consistent with the data that we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mwenya, and thank you very much, Michelle, for your question. I have another question here from Siddhartha Das, and I think this really will sort of be directed towards probably you, Mwenya, as a government representative, but it also points towards some of the results that have been reported back in the GLAAS report, actually. And the question is, to what extent do governance weaknesses rather than the financing constraints remain the biggest barrier to translating WASH commitments into services? Any perspectives, country examples which can be derived from these findings? I mean, I think last year the World Bank issued and published a report where, you know, budget execution is reported as one of the biggest barriers. I think this has been confirmed also by the GLAAS results in the most recent report, that it's not necessarily the availability of money, but also how to spend that money. And then that, of course, leads into issues of the human resource capacity. And I think several panelists have mentioned that. I'm wondering if there's anyone who would like to comment on this particular point. And I don't see any hands up, because we can, if you do want to say a few words, we can unmute you manually. If there's any... No? So I don't know, Mwenya, do you want to maybe comment on that particular aspect, on some of these barriers that might be from your perspective, Mwenya? Mwenya, you're on mute.
Yes, Fiona. I didn't get the question.
So to what extent do governance weaknesses rather than the financing constraints remain the biggest barrier to translating WASH commitments into services? If there's any perspectives, country examples. So it's not just about the money, but there's other weaknesses. And I think you've mentioned them quite clearly when you were reflecting, is maybe some inconsistencies and overlapping you know, roles and responsibilities. And you also mentioned that that was something that has been highlighted by the GLAAS data. How are you acting upon that in Zambia?
Although I haven't gotten the question correctly, but I'll try to attempt. Yeah, I think in terms of resources, in terms of resources, we might have those at times. Okay, I'll try to give a practical example. For instance, referring to the question where we have, for instance, 100% funds being released, and then you'll find at the end of the day, you don't exhaust those funds for that particular year. So there are other issues that come at play. For instance, issues to do with the human resource. And at times also, there are other, what would I say, processes that are involved. For instance, in the procurement of certain projects that you intend to procure in that particular year. So at times it's not really finances, but other aspects that come on board. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mwenya. And I think there's sometimes some institutional burdens and delays that can delay any, spending and budget execution and project execution. I see, Juste, you've got your hand up. Did you want to comment on this question? Juste, over to you. You're on mute, Juste. You have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, no, there are examples of these kind of limitations that are not directly related to let's say, the lack of finance or of resources. Let's take the example of regulation. We've seen in many countries, regulation exists on paper in policies, but they are not enforced. And it's not necessarily a lack of money. It's not a lack of financing. It's a lack of political leadership or willingness or political will or yes, and also exactly as the other colleague said, sometimes it's a lack of human capacity linked to civil servant framework in the countries. So this example shows that it's not necessarily translated in terms of we are missing money for investments, but it's about other solutions, other bottlenecks. We can also take the example of the tariff. In many countries, and for example, that's one of the big burden or big challenge that many utilities are facing. The tariff is too low to help the utilities to perform. But tariff setting is a political decision. It doesn't take more money to address the tariff challenge, but it takes really the political will to take this very sensitive and socially difficult decision to say, let's raise the tariff to improve the service quality. So it's not bringing more money into investment that would address this issue. To give this example, it's more about the fiscal discipline of the country. It's more about the budgetary decisions that the country makes that would help addressing this. So these are a couple of examples of situations or cases, concrete cases, that many countries are currently facing that will not be resolved by more money. And let's also be clear about something. It's only when these issues would have been resolved that the countries will be able to attract more money, because solving these issues of regulation, of fiscal discipline are critical to build the trust that the sector is currently missing for attracting financing and investment at scale. So let's no longer take the problem in the wrong way. We will not get the scale of investments, the level of money that we need. We will never get this if the problems persist. And it will not be the other way around, that we will wait for the problem, for the money to come to resolve the problem. It will be to build the trust, so to address the reforms, to implement the reforms, to address these structural problems, to build the trust, even from domestic funding to come into the sector, and then for external support, external financing to come. So I think these are really critical insights that we can draw from the findings of GLAAS. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Juste, for coming in. And I definitely want to be walking along this path holding your hand, believe me. So thank you so much. We've got a couple more questions that we're going to address, but then I'd like to just maybe give the word to our colleague in Madagascar, Malala. But before, Malala, I turn to you. there's a couple of questions that have been brought to my attention. And for example, Eva Jimenez, could organizations or institutions report to GLAAS without the coordination of the country government, or it needs to be adopted first by the country? And Eva, just to answer your question, governments are the lead here in reporting to GLAAS, and then partners like WHO, UNICEF, IRC, WaterAid, we are there to support this process. It's a voluntary exercise and reporting that is done and country government led. So it's and I'm going to combine this maybe with a question that John has raised and a reflection about, you know, reporting cycles and whether, you know, for future surveys we could also envisage that the report be produced on a more regular basis. I mean, I think what we've tried to do in the past, well, at the very beginning, GLAAS was meant to be, and one of the A's was actually annual. But what was realized at the time, and this is about 15 years or so ago, is that some of the policy, particularly policies and the governance questions, didn't change on an annual basis. And so there was discussion about it being more on a cycle of 2 to 3 years, and this is what we've ended up. But however, there are some questions that could be asked that where data do change on a more regular basis, and maybe there's some extraction that can be done. But this maybe leads me to an initiative that's a joint WHO, UNICEF in collaboration with the World Bank, but also with IRC and WaterAid, which is called Aligned to Accelerate, where many partners, and I've only listed a few, but there are many more, are trying to identify a core set of indicators that could be integrated in national information systems to monitor the strength of WASH systems. And the idea being that these indicators would be the vital signs of the systems and would be, you know, what is going to create a shift. And just to sort of, maybe somebody on the team can put the website link in the chat, but we're working towards developing these core set of indicators. We're still in this process of doing it. And so that maybe, John, to sort of answer your question, what we could consider is between sort of bigger GLAAS cycles and surveys, we could work on having information being reported back through national information systems and feeding into sector reviews and national processes on this core set of indicators that we can all agree on. So more information will be available through the website, and I'm sure somebody in the team has put the link in the chat. I hope that attempts to try and answer some of these questions that have been raised. I'd like to maybe now turn to Malala Ranarison from Madagascar, maybe just to reflect a little bit from also a country perspective and WHO country office in supporting the government jointly with UNICEF and other partners in Madagascar on, you know, the use of GLAAS results, and any reflection you'd like to share with us. Malala, over to you.
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome. Hi, Malala.
Hi everyone. Thank you very much for having given me the floor. I think many relevant interventions have already happened. I'm not sure if what I'm going to say will add anything, but I hope. So as you mentioned, Fiona, I'm going to give some thoughts about how Madagascar has conducted the GLAAS process and also how we have used the results of the fundings from this GLAAS cycle of 2024-2025. And as you mentioned also, we had a very good collaboration with UNICEF to support the Ministry of WASH that has coordinated the process. There has been very interesting synergy and coordination between the two organizations, as we have had many technical meetings to prepare the process between the two agencies, but also with others. Like at the time, we also had USAID coming with us, and some other international NGOs like WaterAid in the preparation. So for Madagascar, the GLAAS process was not only to fill the questionnaire, it was also an opportunity for us to discuss a lot about what have been the achievements, what have been the gaps in the sector, what were also the priorities, because we had the opportunity to make an analysis of the WASH system in its globality during a 3-day workshop on which we could, during which we could gather around 40 entities and about 60 participants from various sectors, from the government, from the private sector, from civil society organizations, from development partners. So there was this opportunity for us to make a kind of review what has been done during the 2 weeks between 2022 and 2024, because there have been many achievements during this period. But for Madagascar, the GLAAS process we had in 2024 was an opportunity to gather everyone and see who has done what in the sector. And that's why we could also see concretely what has been done in the sector that time. So to conclude my intervention, I would like to say that Madagascar could use the GLAAS for different kinds of documents. Firstly, because we are now using the GLAAS to inform the national WASH sectoral plan that is being developed right now. We have also used data from GLAAS to inform studies like the WASH Gap. As you know, we have worked a lot on human resources during the GLAAS cycle as well. So the data linked to human resources from this GLAAS of 2024-2025 have been used to inform a WASH Gap study that has started this year. We have also used the data to develop some advocacy documents to mobilize not only resources but also partners around the WASH sectors, because thanks to the result we have gathered from the GLAAS cycle, we know that there are still some partners that are missing that we need to have with us if we want to achieve our objective in the WASH sector. And also, thanks to the GLAAS, we could use also the information about the funding to inform the WASH brief for UNICEF, for example, WASH financing brief. I think so, that's what I can say for Madagascar side. Thank you for your attention, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Malala, and wonderful to have you with us and to get that perspective, country partnered perspective. That's fantastic. I'm really pleased to say that we're still on time, and I really like to thank our panelists, and I would like to ask you all to join me in giving a round of applause to our panelists of today for their rich reflections, and all of you to for all your engagement, your reflections, your comments, your questions, suggestions. I keep them coming. I mean, the key message emerging is that GLAAS is not just a diagnostic and monitoring tool. It's a catalyst for strengthening WASH systems. When the data is actively being used in various processes, policy dialogues, planning, budgeting, and accountability. So we look forward to continuing this collaboration with all of you as we prepare for the next GLAAS cycle and work together to drive evidence-based action in the sector and to walk together, all together, hand in hand. I think I see one hand up. I'd like to, maybe because we only have about 3 minutes left, Federica, would you like to maybe put your point in the chat, if that's okay? Because I'd like to pass over to Bruce Gordon, who's actually the Vice Chair of UN Water, and he's also the unit head of Water, Sanitation, Hygiene and Health at WHO, to give us a few closing remarks. So Bruce, over to you. And thank you to everyone again.
Well, I just thank you, Fiona. I want to just continue with your thank yous. And honestly, I missed a little bit of the beginning, but one thing that I remarked just coming on, especially for this last round of exchanges, was my impression is that you're seeing everyone on this call, and I see what 100, well, there was 170 when I checked, but GLAAS is our collective resource. I say our, it's a resource, I think, for everyone. And while, you know, it's a WHO, UNICEF, UN Water sort of product, it's really incredible that I feel like everyone is seeing themselves in it and owning it. And it's useful to all of you. And it's interesting because when I think about some of the questions and exchanges that you were just kind of moderating, Fiona, I mean, that's what we're pointing to, I think, as far as the future, right? In other words, like when you mentioned a line to accelerate, and when we talked about this idea of standardizing some of the questions and making them really kind of building a system that's useful for countries, they use it. GLAAS draws on that, make it efficient, make it, as you said, something that can guide investments and drive accountability. But importantly, like just this whole issue that we talked long about as improving governance, right? And I really like that question about, you know, sort of like the funding versus governance, because ultimately I do say, and I'll say it boldly, I think governance is the bottleneck. I think you can have lots of funding and poor governance, and I don't think you'll see many results. But if you have a modest amount of funding and good governance, you may see some results. And of course, we know from GLAAS and all those wonderful things you said, Juste, you need funding to essentially get the institutions strong and human resources in place. You need to figure out a way to get those initial investments in place. But ultimately, GLAAS is about, you know, trying to find a way to take the temperature of the systems and the governance. And I think that's the, you know, you mentioned, Fiona, it's not necessarily a diagnostic only, but it's a tool for all of us. So with that, I mean, what a wonderful discussion. What a great big thanks to all of you that have, you know, kind of contributed. And of course, thanks to the team in the background that has prepared this. I know a lot of work went on to it. So a huge expression of thanks on behalf of the team. And you could read, that's the team at the bottom of the slide. And that heart, I think, says it all. So I think, Fiona, with that, just a huge sense of appreciation from all of us to all of the participants. Thanks for spending 90 minutes with us.
Thank you to all. And stay safe, stay healthy, and drink lots of water. Have a glass of water. And we'll see you next time. Keep in touch and keep those questions, suggestions coming, and use the GLAAS data. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.